Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. I'm Boris Liesenghausen. December 5th, today's episode will be packed. So in this episode, Putin's humiliation in India. What trap did he fall into there? Russia has been ordered to return 20,000 abducted children from Ukraine, and for some reason, Russian propagandists no longer believe in a brilliant victory. And also, Putin made a whole series of strange statements. I'll definitely show and tell you about two of them. It turns out that the leadership of Belgium is receiving personal threats if they even try to touch the Russian assets held in their depository. We'll talk about that. The ghosts are back in action. The Gyuar is destroying fighter jets in occupied Crimea, while SPU drones are setting important targets deep inside Russia on fire. In short, a fiery roundup of strikes from last night. And then there's Kadyrov. Once again, he's threatening Europe, promising to take Warsaw in 6 seconds. But for some reason, he cancelled his live Q&A, something wrong with his health. Lately, things haven't been going so well for him. And not just that, there's a lot of interesting stuff in today's episode. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. And I'd like to start by saying that today, December 5th, is Volunteer Day, a day for people who simply don't know the word impossible. In other words, there's the phrase, we need to raise funds by yesterday. I know for sure that without volunteers, this war would have been very different. It would have been harder, darker, and colder for our defenders. So thank you to each and every one of you, to those who start the fundraisers and to those who close them with their donations. You are a tremendous force. Every time, in every episode, I wish you all strength and patience so that every fundraiser for our defenders was closed quickly. And also, a special thank you to the countries and citizens of those countries who support Ukraine. You know, as I organize fundraisers for our soldiers, I've met a huge number of truly wonderful people. So from them to all of you friends, a huge thank you and congratulations on Volunteer Day. So yesterday I listened to Putin and I want to tell you he's completely lost it now. Seriously, either he keeps forgetting to take his pills or something else is going on. Of course, I'm not going to show him to you. Someone might be eating right now after all. But there are some key quotes. So get ready, as they say. Fasten your cringe seatbelts. Here it comes. Russia wants to end the war that the West started against Russia using Ukraine as a proxy. Seriously? Russia? The West started it using Ukraine as a tool. Maybe we should play him the video where he sits in front of the camera and says he made the decision to start the special operation. He personally, this balding Botox jellyfish, sits there all puffed up. Not in response to the West attacking him or, I don't know, Ukraine attacking on the West's orders. He sits there and says, I made the decision to start the special military operation. That's it. That brazen face was practically oozing Botox through the screen. He was just so smug and pompous. I think I know what the issue is. Why does he think no one remembers what he said? Well, first of all, because there are several of them, I don't know where their pen is, where they keep those replicants in the Kremlin. Secondly, he said himself that he doesn't use the internet. Well, more precisely, he lies about using it, but it's obvious he doesn't understand what it is. And he doesn't know that everything is saved on the internet. So Putin's whole world is folders and cards that he reads from in huge font. So, by the way, West, let's admit it, I know I'm being watched, definitely in many countries. So which one of you, dear West, started the war? I don't know, maybe Poland, maybe France, Germany. Which one of you started the war through Ukraine? Come on, confess in the comments, Putin again. The West dragged him in somewhere, he didn't want to go there, he got tricked again. Listen, he said it 100 times already. Tricked, we were deceived. But if you're such an idiot, then why are you still sitting as president? And it's already the 500th term in a row, the 500th. Frankly, you know, it's hard to come up with a dumber excuse to cover up the inability to continue the war. That the West started the war using Ukraine's hands. Here's an even dumber excuse, that Ukraine was the first to want to attack a nuclear state. And then there's the whole thing about mosquito biolabs, which will supposedly infect only Russians. But that's a whole other story. We won't even bring that up. Here's another gem. From Putin. Russia didn't annex Crimea, but came to help people who didn't accept the coup in Kyiv, said Putin. Remember this phrase, didn't accept the coup in Kyiv, Russia. Came to help them? You're a bald-faced liar. I was born in Crimea, and I never asked anyone to come and help. And a bunch of my friends didn't ask anyone to come and help either. And really, what business is it of yours whether people in a completely foreign country accepted it or not? Whether they accepted the coup or not, as some people did, according to him. But this is probably going to be my favorite topic now, the so-called illegal coup in Ukraine. And all the whining and barking and cries of help, they didn't accept it. Here are a few examples for you. Putin's friends, who are warmly welcomed in the Kremlin, whose debts are written off, unlike those of Russians, by the way, who are traded with and hugged at receptions. But these are the ones who came to power as a result of a coup, and part of the population did not accept this coup. Let's take, for example, the entire African Corps. There's Mali and Colonel Goita. That is, he carried out 2 coups in a row. First, in 2020, he overthrew the president, and in 2021, he arrested the interim president and prime minister and declared himself the main leader. Right after the coup, he invited Wagner people there to protect him. In general, he's the key conduit for Russia's interests in Africa. That is, Russia blocks the UN investigation into his crimes. How is that even possible? Some of the population there didn't accept the coup. Putin, why didn't you come to help there? Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traore, a captain, well, one of the youngest, I think. He's 36 or 37 now, something like that. So he also overthrew the one who had come before, as by means of a military coup at the Russia-Africa summit. He called Putin his idol, quoted Che Guevara, and asked for a nuclear power plant to be built. Well, what can you do? Here's another coup. This one is probably Abdurrahman's favorite. Che. There's yet another African leader, a general. He, in July 2023, you know what he did? He was the head of the presidential guard and simply locked President Bazoum in the basement and declared himself the leader. So that's how it can turn out, apparently. Well, in general, their interests align closely with Russia's. Very closely. They all go to visit Putin. They all hug. They all pose together in photos. This is exactly that small group who come to Putin for the May 9th parades. And then there's Myanmar. How can we not mention Min Aung Hlaing, the general, who is also from the army? The Democratic Party lost the elections, the general got offended, brought out the tanks, and arrested the government. He started shooting protesters. What a horror, Putin. Why aren't you going there to help? Well, yeah, basically. And here, look, I come across this piece of news. Today, more and more interesting agreements and, in general, events are coming to light regarding the frozen Russian assets. The Prime Minister of Belgium said that he personally received threats from Russia in the event of the confiscation of frozen assets. Let me remind you, on Wednesday, the European Commission published legal justifications for transferring 210 billion euros of frozen Russian reserves to Ukraine, but this did not change Belgium's position. Right now, there are 2 key players who do not want these frozen assets to be transferred to Ukraine so that Ukraine could use them to buy weapons. These are Belgium itself and the United States. No surprise there. The United States has its own commercial interests. What else could it be? So Belgium is not giving permission, and Prime Minister Bart de Wever stated that Moscow threatened to personally pursue him forever if the money is seized. Listen, and he also said that, well, we would undermine legal norms if we transfer it to Ukraine as a reparations loan. We would undermine legal norms if you don't respond firmly to Russian aggression right now, and transferring the assets is the bare minimum. Ukraine will buy weapons and strike at Russia until, well, the balding muskrat over there raises its paws. If you don't respond firmly right now, and if you don't show that you can't be kept on a leash just by threats, then Moscow won't just undermine your legal norms. It will actually undermine your sovereignty and independence. What kind of era of cowards is this, huh? Well, explain it to me. Quote, Moscow made it clear to us that in the event of confiscation, Belgium and I personally will feel the consequences forever. That seems like quite a long time. Well, what can you do? And he also said, well, who even gets this reparations loan? Who does it go to if Russia loses? Who said that at all? And he said, who here really believes that Russia will lose in Ukraine? That's a fairy tale, a complete illusion, he noted. And such a defeat, this is why I even included this news in the episode, such a defeat is actually undesirable. That is, if Russia loses. Because then, in a country that possesses nuclear weapons, there will be instability. God forbid Russia loses. Are you kidding? There would be instability inside the country. but you somehow survived the instability when the nuclear Soviet Union collapsed. Maybe it's better to go through it once, instability, than to live like this in fear forever, for the rest of your life. Or does Belgium think that Russia can only attack those who share a border with it? No, Putin has far-reaching plans. That is, at the very least, he probably dreamed up taking all the countries of the Warsaw Pact. And this position in general, let's not provoke the paper rat, God forbid. Other dictators might come running and withdraw their assets from European depositories. Can you imagine what a disaster that would be? The dictators will withdraw their assets. By the way, I know who made that threat. It was Medvedev who recently voiced threats that he would pursue, even extrajudicially, everyone, I don't know whether personally he or Russia, everyone involved in the transfer of Russian assets. I don't know, maybe he called the Belgian Prime Minister, breathed alcohol fumes into the receiver, and stayed silent. So what is Medvedev going to do to the Belgian Prime Minister? Tell me, is he going to run him over with a kid's bicycle somewhere, or what is he going to do? Briefly about Putin's visit to India. There, a brutal humiliation is taking place. In all the videos, Putin looks completely bewildered. Modi is not making any concessions. In other words, Modi understands his position, especially now, against the backdrop of US sanctions against Rosneft and Lukoil. Basically, Russia simply has no way out. Its main buyers of energy resources are China and India. That's it, Putin. And he can't even get his money back. So you see, Modi can twist his arm as much as he wants. But that's not Putin's main problem. In a recent episode, I mentioned that Russia sold about 60 billion worth of oil to India in rupees. In reality, it's even more. Some prominent experts have calculated that the amount is around 100 billion. So Putin likes to talk about record trade turnover. But that's not the point. When he says, we have record trade turnover with India or with China, that's true. But in reality, there is no real trade turnover. In essence, Russia is just selling its energy resources one way, in a single direction. This is what's being counted as trade turnover. Oil goes from Russia to India, but nothing comes back in return, because the rupees that Russia receives for its oil are non-convertible. In other words, a trap has been set for Putin. So he sold for $100 billion, but all of it is in rupees. And now what should he do? India gets Russian oil at a super low price, and the money for it, the rupees, stay in India, because where can Putin even spend those rupees? Russia gives away both its resources and the money, but doesn't get anything out of India. But now India says, you know what, let's do it this way. So you've got these piles of rupees accumulating here. Why don't you invest them in India? But only in those sectors of the economy that we tell you to, meaning the most attractive ones. India shuts it down. They say, how about you invest here? Or, this part isn't liquid yet. Why don't you buy this? That's it. That's your record trade turnover. Putin also went there. Well, another goal was to propose supplying dual-use goods to Russia through India. But Modi isn't a fool. Why would he want these problems with the US, tell me? If Russia is already selling perfectly well, each time with a bigger and bigger discount, why would he take more risks? Why? To end up under American sanctions. With China, by the way, the story is even sadder. China sells whatever it wants to Russia. It fills the Russian market. Putin is proud of this. China buys energy resources at extremely low prices. Well, that's all there is to it. There you have your record trade. I mean, it's a record, but the benefit goes to China and India. By the way, friends, it's Volunteer Day. We're fundraising, we're continuing, we're almost done with it. An important fundraiser for night drones, Mavics, and Avengers for the 32nd Steel Separate Mechanized Brigade, which is currently fighting probably in the hottest area near Pokrovsk. And here is an address from the commander of the battery of the 32nd Steel Brigade. They're hitting very hard there, the Russians. And the commander there is also very, very not simple. Please watch this video.
Бажаємо здоров'я! Я командир батареї американських систем М109 Паладин 32-ї окремої механізованої сталевої бригади, яка зараз знаходиться на Покровському напрямку. Ми разом із глядачами каналу Бориса Тізенгаузена збираємо на комплекси Mavic 3T та Mavic 3 Pro та антени з репітерами до них. Ми дуже дякуємо глядачам каналу, які допомагають нам та не забувають, що війна триває. Дякуємо вам. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Let's help our valiant artillerymen, especially since yesterday was Artillery Day. We congratulated our artillerymen. Here, the commander, her name is Anastasia. She's 23 years old, and since January 2025, she's been the commander of a battery of American Paladin self-propelled guns. She commands 6 guns, 6 combat crews, and an excellent team. Wow, let's support our warriors, and the link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. There's Mono, there's Privat, there's PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. There's just a little bit left to reach the goal. Together, we are a tremendous force. Just wow, let's help out. If you don't see the link here, the QR code also leads to this fundraiser. To each of you, I personally want to say a huge thank you for supporting Ukraine and for supporting our defenders. The main intelligence directorate, HUR, continues to inflict pain on Russians in occupied Crimea. And not only there. They destroyed a Russian MiG-29 with a drone at the Kacha airfield in annexed Crimea. Well, once again, the ghost units were at work. Lately, as they say, they've really been on fire in every sense of the word. The Irtysh airfield radar complex was also hit. It's the one located not far from Simferopol. They are literally blinding Crimea every night. And let's take a look at how it happened. There's even a video. And that's not all. Finally, drones reached Syzran and hit Putin right in the wallet. The Syzran oil refinery, which belongs to Rosneft, is 850 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, and it was hit by drones. Lyuty and Bober presumably were the types of drones used. There were 3 powerful explosions, and they hit the primary oil processing unit exactly, this LOAVT-6. It's important to understand that a refinery can be as big as a city, but if a single primary processing unit goes out of order, that's it, no more. The plant doesn't operate until it's repaired. So they hit exactly where they needed to, pinpoint accuracy. And that's not all. Taman, Krasnodar Krai, the oil terminal at the port of Taman, this is really good. And lately, the ports have also been attacked with enviable regularity. A massive drone raid, about 10 units. I was checking the map in the evening. We have channels that show the approximate number. Everything flying toward Russia was marked in red, and I thought, good, and it really was good. At least 3 fuel tanks, each holding 5,000 tons. Each one. They're burning right now, and the pumping station that pumps fuel has been knocked out, pumping it here. Excellent, just great. By the way, friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Here, we fight against Russian propaganda, exposing the Russian lies that the Kremlin spends hundreds of millions of dollars on. And we also make sure that Russia will never wash away the shame of this war. So subscribe, let's see how many of us there are. One of the elements of the shame of this war, the UN has called on Russia to return the children abducted from Ukraine. Can you imagine Putin? There are dictators who are accused of genocide or something else, of certain things. But this one, the International Criminal Court issued a warrant for him for abducting Ukrainian children. You know, it's not even a dictator's charge, it's something maniacal, really. It's disgusting in itself, and he got the most disgusting charge possible. So to return the children, let me remind you, about 20,000 children are considered to have been illegally deported from Ukraine. And here it is, the club. Do you know who voted against Putin's interests? Only 12 countries. Iran, North Korea, Cuba, Nicaragua, Sudan, Eritrea, Burundi, Burkina Faso, Mali. These are the very dictators who came to power through coups, the ones I mentioned. This is what Putin's sandbox looks like. A handful of dictators from different continents. I will remind you every time what he has been issued a warrant for the abduction of Ukrainian children. All the children must return home. The Russian propagandists got a bit thrown off here, their usual patterns were broken. They decided to draw some historical comparisons. So propagandist Solovyov, this fat propagandist reptile, he claimed that in a few weeks the war in Ukraine will match World War II in duration. And he was outraged by the question of why Russia hasn't achieved the same results, hasn't achieved them. Basically, why they haven't reached Kyiv like they once reached Berlin. According to him, do you know what the reason is? It's that not the whole country is at war, not all of Russia is fighting. He said that the Supreme Commander is fighting, the government is fighting, the presidential administration, the governors are fighting, but beyond that, no one is fighting. What's going on? Basically, this propaganda warm-up started about 6 months ago. Why is the war dragging on for so long? Because Russians are fighting poorly. It's not Putin's fault. It's the Russians who are to blame, all of them, from young to old, who haven't taken up arms and gone to fight. Not because Putin is an idiot, but because Russians are fighting poorly. And I've said it more than once already. Just cancel the payments and see how many people will go fight in Ukraine out of patriotism. I think you could probably count these lunatics on the fingers of one hand. By the way, did you know that also it's compared to World War II, but over there they call it the Great Patriotic War? For some reason, they always compare an invasion by a foreign country with invading a foreign country themselves. So the invasion when Nazi Germany was coming to them, and even there's a little nuance, and the invasion when they themselves showed up here in Ukraine. By the way, did you know that Russian textbooks don't say a single word about how Stalin and Hitler originally made a deal and divided up Europe? Then they divided Poland and invaded it from different sides. You know, there's not a single word about that. It's just a black hole there. For them, the Great Patriotic War starts in 41. No one knows what happened before that. In the new textbooks, especially the ones edited by Medinsky, this period from September 1st, 1939 to June 22nd, 1941, it's just the USSR, you know, like the USSR was simply moving its borders to protect itself. Seriously, and the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, or the Stalin-Hitler Pact as it's also called, they just drew lines across Europe with a pencil. This is for you, this is for me, this is for you, this is for me. Well, let's just split Poland right down the middle. That's all there is to it. But in Russia, if you happen to say somewhere that Stalin and Hitler were allies, you'll end up in jail for it. But you can't rewrite history. Everything is on the internet. And by the way, there are even photos of smiling Nazis and communists together in Brest. And now for dessert, look, Kadyrov promised Putin that he would make Europe apologize in the event of a war with Russia. Quote, Kadyrov stated that European countries would immediately apologize voluntarily in the event of a military conflict with Russia. According to him, no one is going to stand on ceremony with the Europeans. Everything will end very quickly and clearly not in favor of those who decided to start a war with Russia. Kadyrov was threatening. Ooh, how scary. By the way, he also added that he is waiting for the order to start military action. He keeps waiting and waiting, just waiting for that order. And as for us, what do we have? We have friends, we have the golden fund of quotes from academician Kadyrov. So let's recall what he said before. If there is an order from Putin, the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, we are ready to take Kyiv as soon as tomorrow. We have the strength, the resources, the equipment. Kyiv is ours, we will take it. And? Did you take Kyiv? At the beginning of the war, in March 2022, he posted a video where he said, "We are already in Hostomel. Soon we will be knocking on your doors in Kyiv." Did you knock on those doors? By the way he talks, I don't know. There really should be a special Kadyrov translator because he speaks in something between bumblebee and bear language. Some kind of language, and yet somehow, how do people even understand him? And now, my favorite from the collection of quotes by academician Kadyrov about Poland and Europe. This was already May 2022. When he thought that Ukraine was finished, about to surrender, he set his sights on NATO. And then he said, Ukraine is a closed issue. I'm interested in Poland. If we get the order, we'll show what we're capable of in 6 seconds. We'll take Warsaw and reclaim our territories. Why 6 seconds? What's with these 6 seconds? Was he really planning to take Warsaw? He had another quote about Germany. We'll reach Berlin like our grandfathers did. We'll break the back of this satanic Nazism. So did he make it to Berlin? Kadyrov? And here's a news item, literally right after the news from the Golden Fund of the Zolotis. A quote from Kadyrov. The direct line with Kadyrov was postponed due to health problems. He looks really bad, kind of like Winnie the Pooh, barely able to move. But he still dreams about Berlin, Warsaw, and Kyiv. Well, what can you do? And as it turns out, Ukraine is still an unresolved issue and will remind us of itself more than once. Friends, take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Subscribe to this channel, and I ask you very much. It's Volunteer Day, so let's close the fundraiser for our artillerymen. Let's do our best. They really, really need our help right now. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. Wishing us all a peaceful day and glory to Ukraine.